In this episode, climb on board the Orca with us as we hunt the great white in the 1975 classic Jaws. Stay with us. Welcome to the 3324 podcast. If you're new, we appreciate you checking us out. And if you're returning, welcome back as always. Either way, if you're new or if you're returning, we would appreciate if you use Apple Podcasts to listen to us, that we would appreciate a rating and review. That would just be incredible, wouldn't it, Eric?
Yes, indeed it would.
It would be magical.
Absolutely.
and it would really help. So we appreciate it. Yeah. So thank you for coming by. If you are new, there's a bunch of other great content available. So by all means, dig into that. And there's always going to be more coming on the front end too. So by subscribing, that helps you make sure you get notifications. So this way, when the new stuff is there, you get a little ding or a little notification and you know that we're there waiting for you. So we appreciate it as always. So like I said in the intro, we are talking about the classic. Yes. Yeah. This is one for the ages. 1975 classic Jaws. So we'll do the stats, and then we're going to jump right into this one. I don't think we're going to fool around. We need all the time that we can get, and we're gonna save the witty banter.
Lot to cover.
For the actual show. We're not going to do any of the witty banter that we do and time killing in the beginning,
like Dean throwing out
like I'm doing now,
corny joke and not laughing. So we're not gonna do anything.
Well, there's plenty of episodes. There's plenty of episodes for that. God only knows, and there have been plenty of episodes in the past. If you're doing research and you're fact checking, you can hunt down those jokes that landed flat.
Yep. So
check
them all out.
That's it. Yep. Someone can make a Wikipedia page about that. So Jaws was released in 1975. Based on the book from 1974, written by Peter Benchley, which was a bestseller when it came out. This was directed by Steven Spielberg, his second feature film, but his third film, pretty much. Duel was actually a TV film first, and then it did get a theatrical release, but this is his second feature film that he was making as a feature film. The budget was $4 million, but it ended up costing $9 million.
Yeah.
So this is one of that stat we'll probably revisit in a little bit about the overrun. Either way, 4 million or 9, it made 472 million. So that extra 5 million is like throwing bricks in the Grand Canyon. Honestly, when you make 472 million, you know, spending that extra 5, I think you're okay with it.
Absolute instant success. Just blew the records.
This was a record setter, a pace setter, and a trend setter in a lot of different ways. And then the cast, we'll go over the major players. Is Roy Scheider, Richard Dreyfuss, Robert Shaw, Lorraine Gary, and I have to give props. The unsung hero, Murray Hamilton.
Yes. Mayor Vaughn, Larry Vaughn,
which we will get to also. So I wanted to give. Usually it's the three. It's Scheider, Dreyfuss, and Shaw.
Sure, yeah.
But I think it's due time that Murray Hamilton.
Oh, absolutely. You can.
Especially in this age of memes.
Yes.
Mayor Vaughn has become a internet celebrity. So Murray Hamilton, if you learn his name, and
I wonder if is it him or his jackets? I don't know. The jackets that he wears in the movie.
It's both.
I think so.
There's a couple of things about Jaws that have become about Mayor Vaughn that have become kind of significant in current events. So this was the first Hollywood blockbuster, set the standard for summer blockbusters. Yeah. There was a massive ad campaign associated with this, which is not something that normally would happen back then, with TV ads. Because back then in 1975 and in that era, the summertime was known as the dead zone for movies.
Yeah.
We live in a different era where summer is when the blockbusters come out. This was the one that set that tone.
And it set the standard for everything to come. I mean, and it's still going strong today. I mean, in fact, tentpole movies are the thing today. I don't think there's really nothing else. So, you know.
But and this was the one, about a big story, big action. It also spawned the whole sequel thing. Also, not a lot of movies had a bunch of sequels except for maybe the Planet of the Apes series before.
Instant franchise,
franchise, which they would drag into I can't say drag into the ground, or drag into the ocean.
Yeah, pretty much. Although they're just, they are fun to watch just because they're so bad. But as they go along, but yeah, you spoke of the marketing campaign. Props have to be given to voice actor Percy Rodriguez, who did that classic ad on TV with that really deep resonant voice, and those were trailers back in the day. I miss those kinds of trailers. And to this today, trailers pretty much tell you the whole movie, right? And everybody's excited about a trailer. Back in the day, it was so different and presented so cool. This guy had such a great voice, and he did a lot of horror films and such. And there's that tone where he's, it's like God created the devil and he had jaws, and you might remember the actor actually from an episode of Star Trek. I think it was the Court Martial episode, where he plays the judge advocate. He's the judge in the episode. So that character voice, that bossa nova voice that he had, it was so effective, and it was such a great marketing campaign. I remember seeing the commercials on TV, and that's what kind of like got me going for the film.
Yeah,
but
did you see? I did not see this in the theater.
I did not. No,
I was a bit too young. I'm happy to say I was too young to see this film when it first came out. I did see Jaws 2 in the theater, though.
Yeah, that Pickwick in Dobbs.
In Dobbs Ferry, New York, in Westchester County.
The town that we both grew up in.
Yeah, there we go.
I did, however, see. Now, here's a little story, and I'll try to make it fast, but I did get to see, however, on the big screen, we were coming back from visiting some relatives in Little Ferry, New Jersey, which is right over the George Washington Bridge. It's not that deep into New Jersey. So as we were coming home that night, it was like 9, 10 o'clock at night, and we were caught in traffic. So the traffic wasn't moving, and I look over to the left, and I saw probably the biggest drive-in movie screen that I had ever seen. I'm probably exaggerating. It's probably not that big, but when you're 8 or 8.5, it looks huge, right? So I got to actually see the Kintner boys' death scene on the big screen. That's probably the only way I got to see it on the big screen. Yeah, so and the traffic started moving.
Not something you want to see when you're driving by.
No, but it was the key scene. One of the key scenes in the movie. But yeah, that was great. But that was my experience. Yeah,
I didn't. I remember there was a lot of things. This movie was significant for a lot of reasons as well. In that, and if you were around, you'll remember this. Yeah. Now it's going to sound corny, and it's going to sound hokey and unrealistic. This movie caused a verifiable panic amongst people, even people that didn't see it. I remember I didn't see this movie, and I was frightened of it. Yeah. Because you were hearing what was happening, and people, this movie literally made people afraid to either go in a beach, go in a lake, and actually even go in a pool. I mean, right. Yeah. It had that effect on the population at large. Mm-hmm. Not even necessarily the moviegoers, but just the word of mouth of what this film was, how it was, and how intense it was. Mm-hmm. That it caused the beach going in 1975 was down that season. Yeah. Because of this film, people were frightened to go in the water. And Peter Benchley, the author of the book, actually in later years would say that he regretted writing a book like this that made people fear that animal, because then it led to hunting and poaching and all that kind of, and culling of it where it didn't need to, where people didn't really know about it. So that was something interesting. And then as a child at that time, I was surprised to find out much later, because I didn't pay attention, that this movie was rated PG. Mm-hmm. I thought this was an R-rated film. Yeah, PG. Not that I knew about ratings back then, but from what you were hearing and the panic that it caused, I immediately just naturally assumed as I grew up and people talked about Jaws that this was an R-rated film. Yeah, it was pretty intense, and in fact, there were quite a few movies back in the day that were PG where there was nudity in the film, and they got away with quite a bit with that rating back in the day. But yeah, you're right. Jaws was probably, in retrospect, if they had added maybe just a couple more scenes, and some of the scenes that they did and they decided not to do, probably would have given it an R rating, I think. Yeah, absolutely. PG-13 didn't exist yet. Now, Temple of Doom was Spielberg to thank for that. Yeah, that created that rating, right? He would keep pushing the envelope. That's right. So so we talked about the budget was $4 million, ended up costing $9 million, and this film also ran just some. So we get some of the behind the scenes, and then we'll talk about the plot, and then we'll kind of circle back.
Sure.
This went 100 days over its shooting schedule, so that was a concern as well. This was one of the first films to mainly be shot on the ocean. Usually, when you're doing films about the sea or water, you're in a back lot and you're filling a tank or in a lake or something else, but not out on the ocean.
Right. Spielberg wanted that authenticity, and he said, "There's no way you could do this and do it justice." But he had no idea about the conditions on the water. He had no idea about tides and currents and just the change in the weather, the wind, and all that kind of stuff, and the abuse that the equipment would take, all the mechanical equipment, because they were basically on the water for such a long period of time. These were sets on the water, the boats, the mechanic, of course, the shark, and all that salt water getting in there.
Yeah, would get into the gears and the mechanics, and there was 3 sharks that were used. So there was 2 sharks that were kind of cut in half, where they would be used for left side or right side, and then the other side, all the gears and everything would be exposed, so people could manipulate them. And when that stuff, and then when the foam, the outer foam that the shark was made of would get wet, it would actually soak up water and get larger and then sink.
Yeah.
So I think they had the best intentions of, hey, let's make this movie on the ocean. And I think they kind of almost like an Apocalypse Now type scenarios. These things happen that you're not prepared for or didn't plan or didn't realize would happen when you got there. When you actually get onto the ocean.
It's the old saying, the spirit's willing, but you don't think about it. Even the producers, when they first they read the book, they said, this is going to be a great movie. This is Richard Zanuck and David Brown. They said this is going to make a great film, but they didn't think about how it was going to get made. And they even said, if we had read the book twice, we would not have made this film. Because going back and reading it again, they just figured, oh my God, but they didn't think about how it's going to be done. And of course, Spielberg was young and idealistic, and he was a talent. Sugarland Express was not really a big hit, but it was a well-made movie. And they were backing him, and I think they went through a couple of directors. I'm not really sure who they were, but they just weren't right for the part. And Spielberg was like, I'll do it. And so he came, but what a miserable time he had making this.
Yeah.
movie.
He even had some misgivings about it at one point. He was like, I want to get off this as well.
Right.
And some people were saying, listen, you finish this and then you'll be able to make any movies that you want, because of the budget overruns and the mechanical failures, it forced Spielberg. It really forced him to become a director. I think had everything gone to plan, I don't think this movie would have been nearly as interesting.
No, not at all.
Because of what happened, right? You had to think on your feet.
Right. He had to think outside the box. He had to. It was the ingenuity, and he had to look to some of the masters. I cite Alfred Hitchcock as a huge influence on this film. And Spielberg would admit this later on. He was like, because not showing the shark, building the suspense by showing reaction shots and of actors, or showing different props in the film, like the pier, going in and not showing the shark, but building on that tension. The music played a big role. It absolutely saved the film, and that's what made it great. And the terror of the unseen, because that's
usually when the villain or the threat is seen, it's something you can then get your mind around.
Because the ocean is intimidating enough, and that's key. It scared me as a kid. To this day, I am absolutely terrified, but I'm so respectful of the ocean. It's a different world. So you're actually this vast space that you're looking at. Always intimidated me when I was a kid. I'm not a real big beach goer because I'm just afraid. I have legitimate, not a phobia, but like legitimate, just respectful fear. I'm very fearful. Let's put it that way. So yeah. So that being said, the ocean being almost a character in itself. What is beneath the waves? What is this thing that's attacking these people? Yeah, it definitely was used to great effect in that.
Yeah. You really had to. have a certain amount of ingenuity.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in the middle of making a film and these things start happening, you need to get this film completed, and you can't just say, oh, well, we'll just have it cheesy shark, or we'll have it look like it's bloated or whatever's happening to it.
Yeah.
He really got, some inspiration and said, yeah, let's figure this out, and let's see how we can make the best of, make lemonade out of lemons, essentially.
Yeah.
And he did much more than that. It's just absolute. It made it, the terror, the barrels, the scenes with the barrels and just all these different things, build. And he would obviously call back to this in Jurassic Park. There's so much in common with it, that he learned and used to his advantage with something even bigger.
Sure.
So let's jump into, before we get to the plot, let's continue some of the behind the scenes. Let's talk about the score a little bit in John Williams.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Because that is just as important. The Jaws, the main theme is something that's so iconic. People still make, kind of goof on it or imitate it or whatever to this day.
Yeah.
And John Williams is just, we talk a lot about, like, when we talk about albums, we say, oh, this is the soundtrack of our lives and these old albums. John Williams is the movie soundtrack of everybody's life.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's a rock star in his own right. I mean, look behind you, Star Wars on, right behind Dean. We used to listen to that album as we were listening to like a rock album. It was that evocative, that good, just absolutely glued to that. And the score for Jaws, so simple, just those few notes, and yet, God, it's the movie. It's the shark. It is, it's a character, right? And it's so important. It was so important for the film.
Yeah, it became evocative of you knew something was going to be happening, and it wasn't this complicated score. Just some stats about John Williams, so if you want some, like, what his street cred is, mm-hmm. and what has he done? 52 Academy Award nominations. Mm-hmm. He's won 5, so he's won like 10%. That's the most amount of Academy Award nominations ever for a living person. Mm-hmm. His first nomination was in 1968 for Valley of the Dolls, and his most recent was 2020 for Rise of Skywalker, which probably the score was probably the only good thing about Rise of Skywalker.
That's another episode.
And the 5 films that he won Academy Awards for were Fiddler on the Roof, which was kind of some adapted work, but then Jaws would be original score.
Yeah.
Star Wars, E.T., and Schindler's List. So you see after that he's in the Spielberg, George Lucas realm. He's done he's done Superman. He's done dramas. He just doesn't do these big action films. Mm-hmm. Nominated for 72 Grammy Awards, and he's won 25. So this is an amazing composer.
And Spielberg's ultimate collaborator. He's worked on every Steven Spielberg movie to date, I think.
And they all sound different.
Yeah.
That's the amazing thing is
eclectic, very eclectic.
Yeah, there's very few scores or main titles that you can say, well, that kind of sounds like something else.
Yeah.
Other composers will rip on his stuff and try and make something. They'll do a sci-fi movie and try to make it sound Star Wars-y.
Yeah.
But Williams just has this fountain of inspiration and collaboration, and comes up with all these. I mean, Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of the greatest soundtracks. Yep. It's just fantastic.
I like some of the more sublime stuff that he does, the more low key stuff, like Saving Private Ryan and movies like that, where it's not bombastic. It's somewhat subdued and restrained, and some of those scores really affect me in a certain way, because you don't want that kind of music to be, for that kind of film. So whatever the mood of the film is, he instinctively knows where to go and what to do or what not to do. So
he just has that really deft touch, and he's been doing it for so long. So he can do the big stuff like Star Wars and Raiders and all that kind of stuff. And like Eric said, Empire of the Sun, he does some of those smaller ones. Home Alone he's done too. So he can do the blockbuster kid film, JFK. He'll do the serious drama, and it's just absolutely amazing. 7 years in Tibet. He's done it all. So pretty much there's probably not a movie that you either like or have seen where John Williams didn't have his fingerprints on it.
And he's
in some way or
the
another.
maestro, the master, It'll be a sad day indeed. And I mean, he's pretty up there
Yeah,
in age. So it would definitely be a sad day.
I think he's 89.
Yeah. And well, he just signed on to do Indy 5.
There you go.
If that movie even gets made at this point.
If Harrison Ford can do it, then John Williams can score it.
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
If Indy is young enough, or if Harrison Ford is young enough, John Williams would say, well, you know what? I'm there as well.
Yeah.
I'll do it. So you've got all these great things that are kind of partnering is, so some weird happenstance that made Spielberg really have to step up to the plate as a director and not just kind of make a film, but really direct a film. You've got John Williams, who's at that point was well known and well respected and already won an Academy Award for scoring. So you've got all this stuff, and then they build the cast with Roy Scheider, and Spielberg was looking for somewhat relative unknowns because he didn't want the actor to be bigger than the shark.
Right.
He wanted the shark to be the thing, and he didn't want some. There was talk about Heston coming in on some of these for one role, and it would just be too big of a. Oh my God. Like.
I can't. I mean, there were a lot of names being bandied about. But I think what the intent was to make these characters real and to make them more everymen type of characters. Yeah. And I think probably the most flamboyant, I guess for lack of a better term, would be Robert Shaw, because he's just so arrogant in the film and just so larger than life. But he's pretty much, and you got Roy Scheider replaced Chief Brody, who was afraid of the water, and he's a cop from New York, and he thinks he's got this cushy job now, being the police chief on this island, and he's just so, oh, this is a piece of cake. But little did he realize that it's just this problem.
Robert Shaw was coming off. His previous two films before Jaws, Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, and The Sting. So he was on a hot streak, undoubtedly.
That he got the role, I think, because of the Sting. I think Spielberg loved him in that, so I think that really. Yeah,
and it's just one of the and Roy Scheider kind of not as big of a. I mean, he was in The French Connection in 71 and the Seven Ups in 73, so he had that kind of New York cop. And that police officer thing going.
Oh, he's great. And
then Richard Dreyfuss was kind of probably the least known at the time. He had done American Graffiti, which was really big for George Lucas. That was his big film.
Yeah.
But then the next couple of films hadn't really done anything, and he actually turned down Jaws. But then he had a film coming out, The Apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz, and he actually went to go see it himself. He saw it, and he was so disgusted with his performance. He's like, I better take this movie because people might not be offering me stuff.
That's right.
After they see me in this. So he actually almost took it out of career desperation or career salvation, as it were.
Yeah. And it's a great role. Matt Hooper is just, they're so distinct from one another. These three characters who are the main characters.
Yeah.
And they just drive the film. And I think Jeff Bridges was a nominee at some point, which is ironic to me because the next year he would be in the Dino De Laurentiis King Kong, basically almost playing like the same character. So he's got the bushy beard. He's a scientist. He's into primates and that kind of thing. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, John Voight and Kevin Kline, a couple of those other actors were bounced around as Matt Hooper.
Yeah,
and they landed on Richard Dreyfuss, and then he would make Spielberg's next film, Close Encounters.
That's right.
Of the Third Kind. So that turned out to be a little mini collaboration there, where Dreyfuss was able to cash in, and Spielberg liked that kind of everyman character that he was playing as well. Even though Matt Hooper is a little bit more than an everyman character, he's a little more of a scientific person, but. Still was down to earth. All these characters were well written. So,
but not his first choice for Close Encounters. He didn't immediately say, "Oh, you're going to be in Close Encounters," coming off of Jaws. I think he wanted Steve McQueen in the role. Funnily enough, which I don't see that at all. But but he didn't want to do it. So yeah. But then Richard Dreyfuss came, but he was perfect in that too. So. Yeah,
absolutely. The mashed potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's kind of glide over the plot. I'm sure everybody knows it, but we'll just kind of roll through that, and then we'll kind of talk about the actors. We'll talk about the scene, our favorite scenes, and there's a lot to digest here. But So basically what it is yeah, there's a character, Martin Brody, who's a kind of a, from New York, police officer. He comes to Amity Island, which is somewhere in New England, to become a sheriff. And it's a little kind of beach town, a tourist town. They make their money and they're living off the tourists that come in.
Yes.
And what happens is a shark starts feeding off the coast, basically, and kills a couple of people. By feeding, we mean killing. We don't mean eating other fish.
Right. Right.
And he decides that something needs to be done about it with some pushback and some resistance. And then he calls the Oceanographic Institute, and that's where Richard Dreyfuss's character comes in, Matt Hooper, to consult and says, yeah, this is a shark. This is a great white, and this is a killing machine that won't stop unless you either kill it or cut off its food.
You have a big problem here. It's you are not going, like as he says in the film, you're not going to have a summer, which, Mayor Vaughn is pushing back, as all he cares about is making money in the town. And of course his best interests are there, but it's that thing where it's like, he's not even acknowledging the threat. And
do you have the tooth? Right, I pulled a tooth the size of a shot glass out of the hull of that ship.
Do you have the tooth?
Do you have the tooth? I dropped it. And they're like, well, you don't have that tooth, do you? It's like, that's like such diversionary tactics.
I think you're going to ignore this problem until it swims up and bites you on the ass. So yeah, there's a lot of great quotes from this film. But but that's
they try their level best to get the beaches closed, but the mayor pushes back and says, listen, we can't. This is our money. You got, from his point of view, he's saying, well, I'm trying to make the best decision possible. We've got hundreds of people here that live and die by the beach season, by the summer season, the hotels, the eateries, whatever it is, boat rentals, fishing, whatever. And it's 4th of July weekend. So it's the biggest weekend of the year coming up. You can't close the beach.
Right.
You can't do it. Get extra help, do whatever you want, but we're not closing this beach. So they get the extra help. And obviously, I think you can guess what happens.
As we mentioned before, the ill-fated Kintner boy,
Kintner boy was killed in the weekend before. That's when she comes up.
You're right.
After this.
You're absolutely right.
And we'll get to the chilling scene on the 4th of July.
Yeah. You're right.
So that happens. And then finally, the mayor is convinced or bullied or traumatized into hiring Quint to charter the boat to kill this shark and to pay, and Quint is paying what he wants. He wants a pretty steep price. They're willing to pay like $3,000 or whatever. He said, I want 10,
which would, that's a lot of money for this town who's not going to be making a lot of money, so yeah, that's a problem. So, but no choice in this situation.
Yeah. So. You got to right. basically Martin Brody, where he shot his characters, like, we got to pay this man what he wants.
Yep.
And we have to do this. And so he signs on. So they kind of have the charter, and it's the three of them, Quint, Hooper, and Brody. And the thing about Martin Brody is, he doesn't swim. He's afraid of the water. So this is kind of a fish out of water scenario for him as well. And one of the interesting things they say is this guy that is afraid of the water lives on an island. Yeah. And he's like, it's only an island if you look at it from the water. Like,
well, that makes
what does that mean? Like, what are you saying?
Yeah. And of course, Hooper and Quint, they do have this in common. They're both, boatsmen. They know a lot about nautical things. But Quint is a working man. He is, he's very much the sort of salty fisherman, and Hooper is college grad,
kind of the modern. And it's funny, like Hooper and Brody have certain things in common, and then Quint and Hooper have certain things in common. Quint, Brody and Hooper have like the logic and reality, and like we need to do this in common. Like in a town where no one wants to listen to what's going on and the truth. They're kind of putting their head in the sand.
Hooper's the voice of reason.
No. Putting their head in the sand.
Yes, Steen.
Got that beach, Stan?
I got it. I got it. I caught it.
So they're you reel it in. Can't stay down with two barrels. So they're kind of have their head in the sand, but these two are like seem to be the only reasonable two men during this point where they realize it's going to hurt people financially, but we got to kill this shark. We got to do something about it. So they have that in common. And then, like you said, Quint and Hooper have the whole maritime thing in common, although Quint is very kind of dubious, and in one of the great scenes is, show me your hands, and this is a rich man's hands.
He's I don't know if it's envy or for whatever it is, but it's like there's this competition. And that actually happens off screen as well. Apparently Robert Shaw was very competitive with Richard Dreyfuss, and he would force him to do things like competitively, that things that Richard Dreyfuss wasn't obviously comfortable in doing. And he would say, yeah, I could do this, but he goes, you can't jump off the mast of the Orca. You can't do that. And he's like, yes, I can. He couldn't, but he would try to force him to do these things just out of sheer competitiveness. And he was really aggressive to Richard Dreyfuss, apparently. So
I'm sure it was the alleged drinking. Drinking he would do on the weekends.
Yeah. This bleeds into the film. You see a lot of this in the film.
Yeah. Yeah, and then it develops into camaraderie. So the three of them go out on the Orca, which is Quint's ship, and oddly enough, the Orca is the only apex predator to like the great white. The Orca is like the animal that can kill a great white, and it's interesting that his boat is named that. It's basically named a great white killer. So they head out onto the ocean. They're kind of setting throwing some chum into the water and kind of trying to get the shark to bite, literally, and to follow them so they can get it away from the shore and get it away from the people, but then also kill it and bring it back.
Yeah.
So this is almost like a demarcation point for the film. Really, the first half, for a couple of reasons, Robert Shaw doesn't really make any full appearances until an hour in.
Mm-hmm.
The first hour of the film, he's literally in one scene when he says, I'll kill the shark for $10,000. You don't see him again, except for in one little scene when they caught that grandpa shark.
Mm-hmm. They caught the tiger shark.
The busted teeth. It looks like Grandpa Munster shark. It's like,
but it was a real
beaten up thing.
It was a real shark, though. They shipped it in. It was a tiger shark. They caught it, and it stunk up the place big time. And
Robert Shaw goes driving by. Like, that's the only other scene. Kind of watching everything.
He knows he's laughing at them because he knows it ain't it. It ain't it. And that is not the original way Spielberg wanted to introduce the character. However, there's a lot of similarities apparently to Moby Dick in this story. There's some things going on. Spielberg conceived of a scene where he's sitting in the theater in the town watching Moby Dick and laughing like throughout the entire movie, like forcing people to get up and leave because he's laughing so maniacally at this really cheesy, at John Huston's Moby Dick. And it's just, but it's ironic that he would be laughing at this when the actual second half of the film is just that.
Yeah.
Chasing down the white whale, so to speak. And
and that's the demarcation point is an hour in is really when the charter starts, the hunt, as it were. And I think you're getting two different films too.
Yeah.
The first hour is almost has more akin to a horror film. The second hour is an adventure film, and the score actually changes to match it.
That's right. You're right.
Which is one of the brilliant things I didn't notice until we rewatched these movies in the run up to it.
Yep.
And I'm listening to it. I'm like, you hear that dun dun that famous score a lot. It shows up a little bit in the second half, but not really. Second half has more of a nautical feel to it.
Yeah, when they're chasing the shark down, it's like dun 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 dun. It's like this bombastic, like real.
It's like chase music. It's this adventurous music. The shots reflect that also. There's shots of them on the boat and just all these wider angles. It's literally like two films, and that's why I think a lot of people classify this as a horror film. But I'm not sure. I think it has more. I think that adventure part of it really takes over.
Oh, sure.
Because you spend so much time in the second half of the film. That's all you're doing is chasing.
Well, the thing that strikes me about the movie, especially the first half, is how real it feels. And that's key, because a lot of the people that are in this film are not actors. Like a lot of the extras.
Yeah, they're locals.
The townspeople are actual natives of Martha's Vineyard, which is where they shot the film. And it shows. I mean, these are real people. These, when I think of the 70s, and you see a lot of these films where people are made up to look like people in the 70s with the wigs and, and I watch Jaws and I'm like, I feel like I know these people. Yeah. I've seen these people. You see them every day because I remember.
The guy that throws the M80 in the water? When the other boat's coming by, he lights an M80, just like chucks it in the water and it blows up.
It's like this little launch thing. There's like 10 guys in a boat with a dog on the boat. These guys are almost bumping into one another.
Yeah.
Like, get out of the way. And,
guys like chucking a firecracker off into the water. Like the shark's going to come up from like an M80 or something. Like they have all these like half-assed like methods that they think they're going to use to catch,
right.
Because catch them. So they're out on the sea and they're on the ocean and they're chasing the shark, and they have quite a few encounters with the shark because the shark is now circling them and is, I don't know if you want to say more aware, or if it has some notions, it is hunting them as much as they're hunting the shark. The shark is invested also in attacking the boat multiple times.
Yeah,
a lot of great scenes. You really get character development because the second half of the film is just the three of them.
Yep,
which is great. They didn't spend a lot of time developing the Quint character because he really had one scene where he had lines.
Yeah,
but you get Robert Shaw is so great at it, and the screenplay is so well written that he is a little crusty. But then there are some of those scenes, like when Brody pulls the wrong knot and all the oxygen tanks go rolling and Hooper yells at him.
Damn it, Martin.
Damn it, Martin. But Shaw, Quint's reaction is, hey, Chiefy, next time, ask me and I'll show you which knot to pull.
Yeah,
he's kind of showing him and kind of almost taking him under his wing a little.
He's very decent he's very respectful of Brody. I mean, there is that. I mean, there is this sort of, and I just love that quote. Yeah, that's real fine, expensive gear you brought out here, Mr. Hooper. Don't know what that bastard shark's might eat it, I suppose. Seen one eat a rocking chair one time. It's like just such great lines. And
yeah, what are you going to be, an astronaut? When they're loading up like the cages,
some kind of half-ass astronaut. Yeah, he's always
he
given
has
Hooper
no use. He
shit.
has no use for technology. He's
old school,
old-time sharker.
Yep.
Fisherman.
That's right.
He's got all of his tools of the trade. The bat, the rifle, the shotgun, the barrels. He's got everything on his ship that he needs for the big reel. And then Hooper comes on with the oxygen tanks, the depth finders, the meters, the sonar, the cage.
Right.
A really great contrast between the two. The two have the same
goal,
same intent, the same goal and the same intent, but they approach it from a different way, and they both end up eventually meeting in the middle and needing each other. So they get through, and there's a lot of great scenes, like when the shark is coming for the first time, and Quint goes out onto the pulpit, and he's got the harpoon, and he's like, tie off the barrel. And you see the meeting of the two technologies is Hooper starts to tie off the barrel, but then runs into the ship to get his sonar, and he goes, now, kind of like, I'm going to show you now.
Yeah.
And the shark is coming, and Brody's like, kill him.
Where the hell are you? Why? Hooper?
It's like Hooper, and Hooper's like, don't wait for me. It's such a great scene. It's tension, it's excitement. Mm-hmm. There's just so much going on there, and Hooper's like, yeah, don't wait, and so then the shark finally is close enough that Quint has to fire, even if he's not ready, and he just gets the knot off, and the first barrel goes. Really great. Just it's not that scene wasn't a tense. It wasn't tension. It was action. That kind of that kind of tense action where almost like you have to defuse the bomb and you're running out of time. This was like the same thing. As the shark is coming, the barrel is not ready yet, and he wants to get the sonar tied onto it as well. So
there's that suspense. And when we talk about, when we mention barrels, if for those of you who haven't seen the film, the intent is to bring the shark up to the surface because of the weight of the barrels. They're
heavy metal barrels,
right? They're not buoyant, so they're not going to sink. So that if you shoot enough barrels into the thing, it's going to force the shark up so that they can kill it on the surface,
or make it so tired. If it is able to pull the barrels under, it won't be able to sustain it, and it'll be tired enough that they can either get it up, kill it, or drag it, or do whatever they're going to do. So usually,
what they didn't count on was how big this damn shark is.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is Quint makes mention of that, of usually two barrels is really enough. So they have a couple of run-ins. There's a fantastic scene at night, which is really the bonding scene of after, they're not really motoring anywhere. They're kind of adrift. They kind of leave the boat to kind of drift in the water and take them wherever. They're not really going to any destination. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like this giant arena where the orca and the shark are, and they just kind of move around through it.
And it's the ocean. There's no land in sight. They're literally on the water. It's shot completely on the ocean. Yep. Such great footage there. I mean,
there's some beautiful shots.
Yep.
One especially in this part of the film is there is a shot as right before this the scene when they're inside the ship at night, where the sun is going down and Quint is standing on the edge of the pulpit.
Yeah.
And the sun is just going, and all you see is his outline, the shadow of him. You don't even see him, but you see this beautiful, gorgeous sunrise behind him.
Yeah.
It's just like that. It was like that magic hour in filmmaking when the sun is going down and you have the right light, and they put Quint on the end of the pulpit, which is kind of like the plank at the tip of the boat where they can walk out on. And he's actually standing facing back towards the camera, and you just have a gorgeous sunset.
Yeah, there were quite a few of those. I mean, they were lucky to get those kinds of shots because unfortunately they did had to do a lot of filtering. You could definitely tell like some of the stuff was shot in the day, and they just put a filter on it to make it look like it was getting darker. Yeah. It is quite noticeable in a lot of the footage, but it doesn't ruin the film or it doesn't seem cheesy. But they just had to do these kinds of things just to get it.
I mean, on some days on a 12-hour day of filming, sometimes they would only get 4 hours of footage just because of all the logistics or what went wrong or who got these actors were also getting seasick as well.
Yeah.
Because of all the time they're spending. So there's so many logistics that are going on that it really is a marvel in filmmaking. Yeah. And you take it for granted nowadays when you see epics like Titanic and Waterworld and all these other films, but this was untried, untested, and unproven at the time, and they literally failed while doing it and had to reconfigure the film into not showing the shark and figuring out how to create that suspense, and it worked so much better.
And what you see is what you get. They literally use the only salvageable footage. I mean, Lucas would do the same thing with Star Wars, just a couple of years later. So, but I love these kinds of films. I love these kinds of stories. These are the films that made everything. I mean, there's such a guerrilla like way of filmmaking about this stuff. And I love hearing reading about this stuff, which really wasn't a lot at the time, but Carl Gottlieb, who wrote the screenplay and who plays the reporter in the film, wrote a great book called The Jaws Log. And apparently a lot of young filmmakers, people like Bryan Singer, Eli Roth, cite this book as the film school 101. Yeah. It's like one of the greatest books ever written about any production of any film. So,
no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. Yeah, absolutely. There's just yeah, and there's a wealth of information. I mean, there's special editions galore on VHS, on DVD, on Blu-ray, on 4K Ultra. This was actually one of the first laser discs ever released. Also on DiscoVision,
that's right.
Was one of the first that ever came out. So back to the plot.
Yes, let's get.
So one of the hallmark scenes, and again, it's so easy to get caught up in the whole shark and the whole blood thing. You're seeing some acting, just bar none in this film as well. It is so important that these characters are lived in. Quint is a lived in character. He's not like a guy that just showed up and he's dirty. He's a lived in character. And when they're sitting around at night and they're drinking and they get drunk, and that's really when the bonding happens. They start sharing injuries and whose injury is worse or whatever. And you get the famous Indianapolis scene.
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil it too much. There is some controversy about, it was written originally. Gottlieb said he also wrote it, but then Robert Shaw, who is a playwright in his own right, supposedly also either helped write it or helped improvise it as well. And Gottlieb says as much. He gives Shaw a lot of the credit for it.
Yeah, it was actually Howard Sackler, and then John Milius wrote a 4-page treatment, which Robert Shaw said, I can't say all this. I got to pare it down.
Yeah.
So he actually pared it down. So what you hear in the film is exactly what Robert Shaw wrote. So
yeah, and a
and it's
little
just,
bit of foretelling,
Yeah.
in the story. There's a little bit of foreshadowing of what would happen as well, which is sad.
Mhm.
And it actually, this you're engrossed in this story.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you start hearing,
It's
start
like a
hearing
ghost.
some knocks against the side of the boat, and they don't hear it.
Yeah.
And it's the shark starts attacking the boat too. So just when things start to calm down and you get some exposition from the characters and some background, it starts again. The shark's not waiting. The shark's not waiting for any stories to be finished. He starts hitting the boat, and water starts coming in. So they start to have a lot of other issues because the shark is now aggressively attacking the boat, and the boat's taking on water.
Mm-hmm.
That's leading to engine problems. That's leading to, a third barrel at some point also.
Yep.
So now the beauty of this also is, there's this, the realization from Hooper and Quint, the two fishermen or the two aquatic or marine guys, that they've never seen anything like this before. Mm-hmm. And Hooper asks as much. He goes, have you ever seen any? And Quint's like, never.
Yeah.
Like, no, never seen this, where it's almost unkillable and unstoppable.
Right. And poor Brody, he's just taking this all in, right? He's like in the background. He's like, what's going, he's pulling out his gun. He's trying to shoot at like with his little revolver.
Yep.
Like that's going to do anything, And,
and from the less is more file, there is one scene when the shark is chasing the boat, and all you see are the three barrels getting pulled through the water. You see the three barrels above the surface, like almost like a surfboard, like surfing a wave coming at the boat, and then the barrels go underneath the boat. It's the shark, but you never see the shark. They don't need to show you the shark. They don't need to give you anything but showing you the barrels, because that the shark is attached to the three barrels and how powerful it is, but as it pulls the barrels under and goes under the boat. It's
the absolute psychology of it. Just knowing that these things are heavy, that they can't sink. This thing is really pulling them under, and they stay under for quite some time.
Yeah.
But then there are some shots that they did get. There's that beautiful shot. It's like it's from an overhead. The barrels go under, but then the shark, you do see the shark.
You see the shark go along the side of the boat, and it's massive.
And it's huge, and it's
massive.
Yeah. So it's so well put together. And just masterfully done from a salvage, just trying to salvage this damn thing, for it being a total disaster. They made an absolute classic.
It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So the shark continues to wail on the boat. See, there you go.
Oh, there it is.
And at some point, Brody's like, "Listen, we need more help. We're in trouble here. The boat is taking on lots of water."
Right.
Or they're trying to actually they decide to lead it back to shore. And this is what the obsessive part, the Moby Dick comparison is. Quint decides, you know what, we're gonna race to the shore. We're gonna drown him in the shallows, because he's got three barrels on him, and the shark was actively chasing them. So he overloads the engine. Black smoke is coming out. I mean, they are marooned on this ship, and it ain't going anywhere. And that's when Brody decides he's gonna call for help. Like, we need somebody. And that's one of the best scenes too. Is they show Quint like grabbing a bat. It just smashes the CB, and you're certifiable, Quint.
And
you're certifiable.
Because Brody knows he's like, now
he's a man obsessed.
He's a man obsessed, but he's actually scared now. Brody, he's getting real. He's terrified now. I mean, because he knows that they're in big trouble. And the great part is Quint at that point realizes that he's out of options. And that's when they turn to Hooper and say, well, what do you have? What does this stuff do? All right. So it's like the last resort. So what can you do now to, so that's when and that's that great edit, right? You know what I'm talking about when he says, oh, that shark will eat right through. And then they show Brody's point of view, and they go immediately into building the cage. Yep. I love that cut right there, that edit right there. It's so cool.
Hooper gets to show what he can do with technology. He's got this quote unquote shark-proof cage, quote unquote. They build it. He's got his tanks. He's got some chemicals, some poison that they put into the harpoon. And as long as he can get the harpoon into the shark, it'll give him the the dose and it should kill him or knock him out or do whatever.
Mhm.
That's another great scene where Hooper's in the water and he kind of forgets to take his glasses off, and Brody kind of reaches down like, give me your glasses, and he's got Hooper's like, I have no spit, because he's so nervous and so afraid.
Yeah.
And this could
Even
be the end.
Hooper's
And the look
afraid.
on Dreyfuss's face, it looks up. He's like, it's just such a great acting job of he thinks this probably could be the end, because he knows he's going into the water, but he also knows what he's going into. It's not a regular shark. This is something that they're frightened of at this point.
This is a guy that studies sharks, loves sharks. I mean, he's had experiences with them before, but he is terrified. And I think in a way, even Quint's terrified when he's standing there and he refuses to put the life jacket on. That goes back to the Indianapolis speech.
Yep.
And he throws the life jackets at both of them. Meanwhile, the boat is slowly sinking
tilting in
while all this is going on, right? So they're hooking this cage on there. And this is where you see some wonderful real life shark footage. That was they got a married couple, Ron and Valerie Taylor. They did worked on a documentary, which was one of the best shark documentaries ever made, apparently. And they shot the scene where the shark is attacking the cage that actually happened in the film. And what it was that the idea was to scale this thing up, was to put a little person inside the cage and make the cage miniature so the shark would look bigger.
Yep.
Right. So they did that. And, but the guy was so terrified. So he wasn't in the cage at the time when the shark got actually caught on the cage. So they have all this really great foot. You think the movie is like good enough at this point, but now you're actually seeing a real shark attacking this cage.
Yeah, tearing up the cage.
It's tearing up the cage, and
it actually ended up that shark ended up rewriting the script, because Hooper was supposed to die.
Yeah,
but because the only usable footage they had was of the shark ripping open an empty cage, they actually had to go back and refilm and had Hooper get out of the cage from the top,
right,
and then they could use that thrashing footage of him ripping the cage open.
Yeah,
and so really the shark actually kind of rewrote some of the film, because Hooper was supposed to be killed in the cage. So he gets away, and he kind of scurries off, and then you kind of forget about him. And so now it's just Brody and Quint in the boat, and the shark just comes right on board. Right onto the boat, and basically is so big that he tilts the boat, he pulls the boat down and tilts it diagonal a little bit more. And Brody's able to grab on, and Robert Shaw, Quint, grabs on to something also, but one of the oxygen tanks rolls on his hand, so he loses his grip, and Brody grabs him, but he slips. And oh my God, it was still horrifying to watch, even when I watched it a second time.
Yeah,
of when the shark is on the end of the boat, just chomping and biting and thrashing, and Quint slides down, but he gets his feet on the nose of the shark, and he's like kicking and pushing against and doing everything he can to stay away from it. And the shark is doing everything he can to move and get him in. And finally, the legs go into his mouth, and like he said in the Indianapolis speech, about the high pitched scream you hear.
Yep.
The blood, the ocean runs red.
It's a very disturbing scene. It's a very effective scene. And this is when you actually see the shark in all its full glory, the mechanical shark. Some people might say, oh, it doesn't hold up, it looks fake. I don't agree. I think, to me,
it looks great.
Seeing this thing, I would be terrified, even knowing that it's a fake shark. If I were sliding down the deck of this boat into the mouth of this friggin' thing, and even though it was a mechanical shark, I'd be terrified filming that scene.
Yeah.
And,
So now the guy that is afraid to be on the water is the only one left on a sinking ship.
Yep.
So, and the shark comes back, and he comes back into Brody is kind of in the steering room or whatever it is, or below the steering room, and the shark breaks through that, and you can see like the bits of flesh in the teeth.
Right. Yeah. That was
coming back for more. And Brody doesn't have anything really to work with. So he grabs one of the oxygen tanks and just chucks it in the mouth of the shark, and it kind of gets stuck. You can't really swallow that.
Mm-hmm.
The ship is going down further. He's able to get Quint's rifle, slings it on his shoulder. He grabs a harpoon as well, and climbs to the crow's nest or the very top of the top of the ship. But basically the ship is almost in the water. He's literally dangling like feet over the water.
Just maybe like a foot or two above the water.
Yeah. And the shark is coming back, and the shark is in full charge mode. And you could see you can kind of see the tank in its mouth still. And he's aiming. Actually, the shark came and he poked it a couple times with the spear, and then it got stuck. Right. The harpoon got stuck in the shark, and it took it with him.
Yeah.
So now all he's got is the gun. A couple of shots finally, and then you get the classic smile, you son of a bitch. He doesn't even get to say son. He says son of a bitch, and
then boom.
The one shot hits the tank, and that thing just.
Which, okay.
It's kind of sad as well.
But here's the thing. Like Peter Benchley, when Spielberg conceived of this scene in the book, that shark doesn't die that way. I guess it got harpooned so it got like killed. It just all of a sudden it just sank, because it just died. Spielberg said, and Peter Benchley was like, "What are you doing? This is the most ridiculous thing." He's like, "This is one of my favorite quotes of any film any director has said." He goes, "I don't care. I have them for an hour and 45. They're gonna accept this last 15 minutes of the movie."
Yeah, you need to give them something big.
I just love that quote from Spielberg. It's one of my favorite quotes, and he's like, "I don't give a shit. I got him. I got the audience," and he's right. He's absolutely absolutely right.
He did.
So
and so Brody gets a little really excited. and then Matt Hooper arises. He kind of swims over. He's alive. He was hiding underneath the water because he had his full scuba gear on.
Yeah.
He comes up, surprises Brody, asks about Quint, and Brody just shakes his head. It's so sad. They had formed such a bond. They had been through something just in a short amount of time, but something so intense and something so brutal that they really had formed a bond. And then the last part, they get a couple of barrels and they start kicking their way back to the shoreline, because they had started getting close to the shore, because they had lured the shark far enough that they were relatively close. The end reminds me of Casablanca.
Yeah,
with Bogart and Claude Rains walking away at the very end, and like, this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. They're kind of like, oh, how far is it, and what day is it? Oh, the tide's coming. It's very similar as they're going away from the screen and talking and kind of cementing their friendship.
The very good analogy. Yeah, it's great.
Always, it reminded me. I'm like, it's very kind of a little nod maybe to Casablanca of kind of
could be
beautiful beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Spielberg himself would say that he fancies himself more like Michael Curtiz, who was the director of Casablanca.
See that?
He's that kind of a director.
Boom.
He doesn't have a very particular style per se. He just likes to tell stories. So all his movies are different. They're eclectic. They're not a very a specific style like a Scorsese or anything. But over time he does develop, I think, certain things.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
absolutely. And he would go on, and Spielberg would go on to a massive career after this. This launched him into really, very few misses in his career. Maybe 1941 was what might be the most notable miss of his career. But after that, it was Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Jurassic Park, where he did use this formula again to great effect with the Raptors, and then with the T-Rex, and actually really mimicking the scene of with the T-Rex attack for the first time, attacking the children, and the plexiglass falls on them. So Spielberg, everyone knows about the great career he had. John Williams as well. We skipped a lot of plot, and now I want to go over, and this is our opportunity to kind of geek out.
Yep.
So what were some of your favorite scenes, favorite shots, or favorite quotes?
Oh God,
there's a lot. I mean, we could probably do a part 2 and a part 3 very easily. So we'll try and go over indulgent, but I'm sure that we may have some similars.
Personally, a lot of my favorite quotes I should come from the townsfolk. They come from like the one guy, like when he's with the tiger shark, right? And he's like, he turns to me, he's got a deep throat, Pratt. And the guy's name is Pratt, the big heavy set guy. And then, he goes, yeah, but what kind of shark is it? And then, Hoover's like, it's a tiger shark. And he just turns around, and, when you hear the guy talk, he has this really gruff voice, but all of it, for some stupid reason, he turns around and he's got like this oh, what?
Yeah, like a really dopey voice.
I don't know what if he's like making fun of Hooper at that point, or if I don't know, but it's like it's become a thing.
I think they made him into like a country bumpkin, like never heard of a tiger, like a tiger and a shark. Like what?
He's like, what? So to this day, the actor, he gets flack from people. Well, not flack, but it's all in love. People come flocking to Martha's Vineyard, and they to this day they still have like Jaws Day where people come and
he should do some conventions. One of my favorite lines from the movie is with Quint. He's like, Hooper, stop playing with yourself. and Matt Hooper's playing solitaire. He's like sitting on the he's sitting on the bottom of the boat playing solitaire. So it's so funny because he's like,
stop playing with Jeff.
He's playing with himself. He's playing solitaire. Well, it's got that double meaning. It's like, quit playing with yourself, Hooper. And then you look and he's playing solitaire.
Well, the whole scene is great though. That whole scene, he's like, Brody, follow that chum line again. He's like, let Hooper have a turn.
Yeah.
He's like,
Hooper drives the boat. You chum the water.
That's the great moment where he's like, slow ahead. I'll give you slow ahead. Come down here, chum some of this shit. And that's when you see actually see the shark for the first time.
He kind of comes up and gives a little smile and then pulls back down and he goes, I'm here.
And then he says, we're going to need a bigger boat. That's the big, that's the big one. But
a lot of great camera work too. And that's the thing that also is I think it was the first beach scene.
Mm-hmm.
And there's where Brody is. Yeah, it was the first beach scene because Brody was sitting on the chair and he was kind of nervous. And that's when the Kittner boy gets killed.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a series of people screaming and some tension there. But there's a series of wipes that begin to result in close-ups. Someone will walk by Brody and you're closer. Yeah. And then someone else walks by and when they're done, you're closer. There's a series of close-ups that they use and they accomplish it by having people walk by that are out of focus. And when they're out of the shot, it's closer. And then that crazy like push pull with the camera.
Yeah.
Where the person
Hitchcock.
Stays in frame. Yeah. Hitchcock has done it where person stays in frame, but everything behind them is moving forward where they're actually kind of, I think they're pulling away with the camera, but then zooming in at the same time. I tried to do it once as a wannabe filmmaker. But just some great stuff there.
That was some great editing there. I mean, those people walking by are actually cuts, and Spielberg was like, "We always have to keep it on Brody. Everything is from his perspective.
Yeah,
he's nervous, he's watching, and you're right. Every time you see his face, it's closer and closer. It's such great
people pass
editing.
by and it's closer, and then someone else goes the other way and it's closer. What we didn't talk about on with the 4th of July scene, which I got. When I watched it the first time, I literally got chills.
Yeah. Was
that, they decide to open the beach and everybody's there and people eventually start going into the water and then there's a fin that goes by and everybody's, the lifeguards start blowing the whistle. Brody's like, don't blow the whistle. Everyone runs out of there.
Yeah.
They train the guns on the shark fin and it's a couple of kids. But what's happening in the lagoon and the pond area is there's another set of fins and this woman is screaming, is yelling, but no one's really listening to her.
Right.
Because they just had this panic and it was kids playing around and now the guard is let down and the shark is in the lagoon. And it was just chilling because Brody's kids are out there on like a little pontoon boat or whatever. And this guy comes sailing over like, hey, what's up? And the shark just goes in.
He's like, are you okay over there? And then the shark comes in and just on that scene,
it's chilling.
It's very chilling because you do see the shark right under the surface of the water come up. And
then the guy's leg kind of like just falls to the bottom. It was chilling because Roy Scheider Brody's running across, jumping over these little dock areas to get down there. And then they drag the son out of the water, but they don't show his legs in the beginning. So you think, oh, like, did he get bitten off? You think what happened? Yeah. And then you see his legs and you know that he's at least that he didn't get bit. Really effective, so effective that just the building of the tension and
Did you happen to see any of the deleted footage?
I did not.
Okay, there's one scene in particular which was absolutely horrifying, and I'm glad they didn't use it. Spielberg thought it was in bad taste, but that scene was not the guy's leg getting bit off. he was actually he's in the shark's mouth, and the shark is cruising along with the guy, but the guy grabs Brody's son. So he's holding on to Brody's son.
That would have been creepy.
While the shark is like,
is biting him.
Biting him. It's like so much blood, and like Spielberg's like, nah, I can't use this.
That would have been interesting.
But it's just, it's a very disturbing scene.
What about you? Favorite scene? And then we'll get to Murray Hamilton.
No, that scene. I mean, it's just God. The whole movie. I mean, it's so full of these moments, these great moments, these character moments. I love the wife, Lorraine Gary. We haven't really talked about her.
Yeah,
she's got.
I love the scene. I love the scene with his son when he's imitating.
Yeah, it's so real.
Just those little family moments.
That's right. It makes a difference.
After that hard day. And they're sitting at the dinner table, and Brody puts his head in his hands, and then the son does the same thing, and then he pulls his head up, and the son does the same thing.
All improvised, by the way. It was all improvised.
Yeah, because he loves his dad, and he sees his dad kind of a little stressed, and this is a film, and that's the thing. The reputation is that it's this horror film. There's so much more under the surface. Like you said, the performances. Lorraine Gary. You said, we didn't really talk about her. Is Brody's wife, and kind of. After they get the son out of the hospital, he said, let's, take him home. And she's like, New York? Are we leaving? He's like, no, our house, our home here. Because
she's fearful of him, for him. And, she knows that he's completely out of his element here. And it's just, it's that loving relationship that, which, is rare in a Steven Spielberg movie, because typically there's broken families in his films. But here is a family, a full family unit, and a loving family at that. And, it makes the difference. There's a lot of this stuff, and that was important. And as his movies got, you talk of Jurassic Park and things like that, when the effects started getting better, I feel like some of that was lost. Like, there was a lot of that kind of stuff was lost. To me, if I were to compare Jaws and Jurassic Park and put the two side by side,
there's no comparison.
I'd pick Jaws any day over Jurassic Park. I don't care.
Necessity is the mother of invention, and they had to come up with ways to make this work, which means they had to think more about how they were going to get this done, and they didn't have access to the sharks the way they wanted and those things. So absolutely, they really were challenged. Mm-hmm. Where, like you said, in Jurassic Park, they have the technology. How are we going to use the technology? It wasn't an issue if the T-Rex gets wet, because it was CGI anyway, so they didn't have to worry about something breaking. Right. I mean, they had some practical ones as well, but those things they had already learned on Jaws. So
right, and that was the movie, really. I mean, it was really about the dinosaurs, and let's face it, the characters to me weren't half as compelling as the characters
Ian
in
Malcolm.
Jaws. Yeah, well, I mean, he might have been the only, and of course Richard Attenborough is great too. But it's like, there's enough there, but to me, in comparison, I think Jaws really takes the cake.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's just, and of course, every scene with Quint, every scene with Hooper. I love the scene where they cut the shark open, and he's throwing out all the stuff like the 007. There's a nod to James Bond there. Steven Spielberg's a big fan of James Bond, so he's throwing the license plate onto the dock, a half-eaten fish, and he's like, that's it. He's like, oh, I've got to, close the beach and call the mayor. And he's like, well, you got a bigger problem than that. You got a hell of a fish out there with a mouth this big. And you really believe what he's saying. Like, you feel it. Like, just in that banter, it's like,
Yeah, especially because of the autopsy scene where he comes in he goes, this was no boating accident. This was a shark attack. So he was already on alert. Yeah. Mm-hmm. and through science and through measuring, right? Because he said the bite radius of that grandpa, I'm going to call it the grandpa shark, because it had like no teeth. It was like the bite radius of that grandpa shark was not big enough. It couldn't have done it. So, and the townsfolk are kind of like a little bit in the dark about it, which leads us to the mayor. We didn't talk about Mayor Vaughn, and this guy Murray Hamilton had the thankless job. Who knew all these years later, like he would become a meme for people that have their head in the sand and don't want to face reality until it's too late. And that's really what it was. And he is such smoking the cigarettes, kind of trying to tell Brody, like, you don't know how it is here. You're from the city where, we live on, we need the beach. We need the stuff. Yeah. And we're going to stay open no matter what. And just didn't want to hear want to hear anything from him.
Right. Yeah. And most recently they were doing, there was a lot of memes because of the pandemic. And of course, with Trump and all this stuff going on, like people were kind of like not acknowledging so the Jaws was like almost becoming, once again, it was reborn, right? It was like, so watching Jaws kind of reminds you of that situation. And like we said, the mayor's just acting, you do believe that he is acting in the town's best interest, because this is their life. But
the way he goes about it is just so condescending, though.
Absolutely, yeah. He was
just so condescending.
And what gets me too is that one scene with the old man who's obviously on the board of I guess he's on the board of directors or whatever, and he's sitting there with his family on the beach and nobody's going in the water, and he's like, "Hey, Larry, how you doing?" And he's like, "How come you're not in the water?"
I just put suntan lotion on.
And the guy, and he goes, get in the water. And the guy does it. That's what gets me.
He like reluctantly gets up and kind of walks to the edge of the water.
But he does it. He listens to him. He's like, "Are you kidding me?" Like I'm always like yelling at the screen with this guy. It's like risking your family to get out there. But as soon as he knew that if he can get him to do that, then everybody would go.
Yeah, everybody else. And that's what happened is once one person went in, then everybody was going in, and it was kind of quote unquote, 4th of July was on. We seem to have navigated this, and it just went south very quickly with the fake shark attack, with that panic, and then the real shark attack. And then, Mayor Vaughn really does have a moment of clarity, but I still found it hard to kind of be on his side, because you know what, they tried to tell you, in the hospital when they get Brody's son, they brought him there, they release him, and Vaughn is at the hospital, and that's where Brody approaches him. He's like, "You're going to do what you do best. You're going to sign this.
Yeah,
you're going to pay for that."
Right.
And even then he was really, no, I got to check with. He's like, "No, you don't got to check with anybody."
No, he's trying to save his own ass. Right. Yeah, he's like, I was just acting in the town's best interest. He's like, and then he just comes out with thinks that he's going to, "Martin, my kids were on that beach too." And he's like, with the cigarette, that's the big
reveal is that, his kids were there, and it's only when his kids are put at risk, then all of a sudden it's important to him. That was the thing is he didn't, it wasn't real to him. It was just this quote unquote fishtail, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't real to him until his kids were directly involved.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, then he's like, "Oh, it was my kid." And then he takes a drag on that cigarette. He's smoking throughout the whole thing, just puffing on cigarettes the whole time, that guy. And he's got his anchor jacket on.
Then there's one which looks like wallpaper. It's like multicolored wallpaper. Those jackets are classic, man.
Larry Vaughn.
Larry
Vaughn. It's such a, and he's one of the, again, he's not in the film that much, but he's so well written and so well acted.
Yeah, everybody
you know exactly who he is.
Everybody.
You don't need to care about where he's from, how old he is, what his home life is like. You need to know that he's just a paper mayor for the most part. Really has got no backbone, no spine, not willing to make any tough decisions on his own.
That's right.
It's just
absolutely. But I feel like everybody who had a part in that film played it so perfectly. Even like Mrs. Kintner. Yeah, the mother, she's not an actress. She lives there. She knows how to improvise a little bit. I guess she's had some acting experience, maybe done a play or two in high school or something like that. But she was really good. She was compelling.
Intense scene.
Yeah,
and
that's become a thing too. Apparently, where she actually
It looked like she wailed. It looked like she really hit him
fans have come up to her and want them to slap them, and she slapped so many people in their life. But she actually stopped doing it after a while. She's like, I can't do this anymore because but fans would come up to it's like they want to get slapped by this woman.
Yeah, go look at that scene. I mean, it looks like she gives him like a roundhouse, right in the side of the head.
Right.
It looks like she really hit him. It wasn't like a fake slap in like a glancing slap in the face. It's like boom, right in the side of the head.
And you just feel for Brody right there. I mean, his whole,
what did Larry say? No, she's wrong.
She's wrong.
And he's like, no, she's right.
She's like, no, she's not. And then the look on Hooper's face. He's like, what the hell's going on here? Like, what, you know? So yeah,
I can't talk to somebody who's lining up to be a hot meal.
It's this whole movie is so good. There's not a bad scene in it. There's
it's
nothing.
not. It is so enjoyable. And like I watched it 2 times in a row and didn't. The second time I watched it and I was just enjoying the cinematography. I was enjoying the camera work.
Yeah,
I really got to digest that. Now there were 2 scenes. Maybe outside exterior shots of the ship. And one is they were, I think, on the ship at night, and it looks like a shooting star goes by. Was that an effect or was that real?
I don't know.
I want to think it's an effect because it happened twice.
I'd like to think so. Spielberg,
I'd like to think it was real.
He's done that a few times in his films.
Okay,
the Close Encounters. It's been done before.
There's a lot to digest, and to tie it also into some newer films. If you're a Kevin Smith fan. The film Mallrats kind of calls to Jaws. There's a subplot about someone getting killed, dying on Jaws the ride, but the 2 main characters. One main character his name is Brody Bruce, and Bruce was the nickname of the shark, the mechanical shark. It wasn't called that in the film. And then the other character is T.S. Quint. So you have Brody and you have Quint. So if you're into that kind of behind the scenes stuff, you can check out Mallrats and. Check out those characters. It has nothing else to do with Jaws except for that nod to these 2 characters.
Like I said before, these young directors, they just cite Jaws as one of the all-time best. I mean, we're not just talking. Well, Star Wars is a whole nother matter. You're a fan of Star Wars for very, very different reasons. But if you want to be a filmmaker in the business, Jaws is one of the movies that I think many, many people cite as just one of the greatest films ever made. Yeah,
and because it's also about overcoming adversity. I mean, that's the right thing. And Spielberg was not Spielberg yet.
That's right.
Let's kind of we'll kind of close on that. Is the appreciation for Steven Spielberg, but he wasn't. This was his 3rd film. He was like 26 years old or whatever he wasn't very experienced with this. He had done a schlocky horror film called Duel about a vehicle chasing, which was somewhat similar. And then Sugarland Express, and he wasn't. I don't think he understood what he was getting into. But this really made him into Steven Spielberg. Gave him the confidence. You make something like this, and it made a sick, insane amount of money at the time. It broke every box office record. It set the formula, like we said, for the big tentpole summer blockbusters. This is where it started of making these big action, high concept films for audiences to flock to.
Yep.
And it would be followed up not 2 years later with the next film that would break it from his buddy George Lucas, which would be Star Wars. And it really set the pattern. And then Lucas and Spielberg and John Williams would all collaborate on Raiders and the Indiana Jones films.
Yeah.
And then the rest from Spielberg. So that kind of goes without saying. But this is the one that started it. Absolute action, adventure. It's got everything. It's got comedy.
Yeah, masterpiece. Just great. I watch every Memorial Day. I kick it off. We were in West Palm Beach, my family, and it was actually on television. And they showed a different version of it. Actually, they put a lot of the deleted scenes, and there were alternate scenes back into the film. And I'm watching this thing, and I'm like, this is different. I never saw that before. So what the hell is this? And it was sometimes they do that when they televise it,
It was the Memorial Day cut.
So, every Memorial Day weekend since then, we watched Jaws, and that basically kicks off the summer for us, that film.
It was tradition. It was the Mayor Vaughn edition.
That's right.
So that's going to do it for Jaws. Obviously, you can see how much we gushed over it. It's a great watch. It is quite it's 46 years old.
Yeah,
it does not seem like it. It doesn't have any dated elements to it because it takes place mostly on the ocean. So it doesn't deal with stuff of the time. So in that aspect, it is a timeless film. It is immensely enjoyable. Elements of horror, elements of action, elements of fun. There's a lot in here. There's quotable quotes. There's beautiful film work. There's intelligent and expert acting as well. You've got it all. So this goes without a doubt into our highly recommended pile. Probably if we had our Hall of Fame, it'd be going into the Hall of Fame. First vote.
No doubt.
I don't think we'd have to go a second round on Jaws, right?
That's right.
Cool. All right. That's going to do it. We appreciate you checking us out. As we said in the beginning, social media, we're there, 3324 Podcast, Facebook, Instagram. Follow us there. We have a lot of fun. We look forward to seeing you. And until next time, this has been Dean. And for Eric, we're going to ask you to please be kind and rewind.